the odds of knocking into the Earth are I mean, if you look at the size and the distances involved, you've got very large objects moving around. They don't have to get very close to each other to create an interaction, because there's electrical, magnetic, and gravitational. So some of these forces are opposed to each other. So you can get an awful effect and still be a fair distance away.
Yes, so you have some sort of legislation.
Yes, it's a bit like, I mean, Marshall Masters on Yasser.com refers to it as a bit like where you've got a load of billiard balls, and suddenly you pot or you send a ball towards them, and they all scatter in all directions. It's in 3 dimensions, as it were. There is another factor that, in relation to our solar system, in mythology there was the birth of Venus. Now, what that suggests is that Venus was a come-lately planet to our solar system, and that could have created all sorts of problems and mayhem in the system. I mean, the sort of thing that Mars was once covered in water, because you can see in the way that the landscape is that it has been ravaged by water. And if you had a larger body come sufficiently close to it, but with its gravitational pull, it sucked all the water off from most of the atmosphere.
Yes, but if it was on a 3,600-year orbit,
Yeah.
then that would take it to a timeline back.
Yes.
Surely that would take us back to like the early Bronze Age. Yeah.
Well, yes. I mean, the thing about the timeline is that every time that Planet X system comes our way, its actual orbital period is going to change, and they reckon it's getting progressively shorter. So this time it's about 3,600 years. The previous time it was probably longer. And
my main question is, kind of leading up to that,
Yeah.
if that indeed is the case, which I'm sure things are half kind of out there,
Mhm.
if it did happen, you would then, and let's say add another 2,000 years on top of that to take it some kind of elliptic orbit. A lot of the ancient sites on Earth are still in alignment.
Yes.
Certain suns and even stars.
yes,
And one would think it'd be knocked into, or everything would be out of alignment.
yes, yes. That's an extremely interesting thing. I mean, there's 2 possibilities there, I think. One is that whatever happened much longer ago than some people think. And another one is that although perhaps the last time it came round, the time of when the children of Israel were leaving Egypt, but it wasn't a sufficiently severe effect to destabilize the planet. So there wasn't a pole shift at that time. But sometime in the past there have been pole shifts, and what I find confusing is that, I mean, I had an excellent little book by a Frenchman, actually. Unfortunately, I left it somewhere, and he was looking at the Polynesians, and because the Polynesians have got no connection to the Pacific Rim in their historical background, he was trying to work out where they come from. And going into their myths and legends, it became apparent that they'd come from Antarctica. And this tied in with, and I don't have the time periods for this, except for one, which is that a previous North Pole was over Hudson's Bay, which is something like 20 some odd degrees west of north. And the pyramids, a lot of the remains in South America and in some other parts of the world are all aligned 23 degrees west of north. Whether at some time in the past the North Pole had been where it is now and had moved around, because prior to that apparently it was over the Yukon, and then in 700 BC for 50 years it was northwest of Norway. But during those times, obviously from the point of view of this guy's book, go at the other end, and Antarctica was partially habitable. So all I can say is that it could be that the North Pole that we have now has, what should we say, that's the default position, and it moves out from that and then goes back to it. I don't know. It's only a guess.
If we class it in Noah's Ark, I don't think we said exactly the same, but we found fish.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a big way.
Well, it is, yes. But I suppose that if you, I mean, you've seen the film 2012. You've seen the tsunamis coming over the tops of the Himalayas. I mean, that's the sort of catastrophe. If you've got a big enough body hitting the ocean, well, then you're going to be getting waves that size. And I mean, it talks about the fountain of the great deep was opened up because obviously there was an awful lot of water under the crust, and there was a water canopy over the top of the earth above the atmosphere, and that collapsed. So what you've got is an enormous amount of water into the system, and then somehow the land masses have got to sort themselves out, and it could be that if the earth had given up a lot of water that was under the crust, then the crust would shrink, and it would probably push up in some places and stretch in others. So, I mean, that's what happens because the earth is squashed at the poles. It's about 60 kilometres less north to south than it is through the equator. If you've got land at the equator and at the pole, when you get a pole shift, then the land that's at the pole, that was at the pole, has got to stretch, and the land that was at the equator has got to buckle. And I believe that's how you may get mountains, mountain building. Yes. Yeah, I mean, the quick question is, where do you go? I mean,
well, the only way out of it, you know, talk about 2 mile ways, you know, unless you've got an airline, then where you're going to land, but with submarine, they say it's smooth around the water down around roughly at that top.
yes, that's true enough. That's true enough.
If you're going to have bottoms of water like that moving, it will really shake you up like you are.
Oh, absolutely, yes. I mean, the thing is that you just don't know. Now, I take comfort from the fact that in the Bible that there is references to this type of thing going on, but I don't think it's actually going to be that bad. I think it'll be no worse or even not as bad as the Egyptian experience.
In the section I've got on that arc, they've even got one of the cross beams sitting in a
Yes,
knoll.
yes, yes. Well, the interesting thing about that is that what Ron Wyatt says about that is that the timber that they've taken doesn't exhibit any rings, and that ties in with the fact that before the flood there was a constant climate condition. So it was like probably living in the subtropics 365 days a year. Probably the only thing they experienced was probably variation in daylight. But yes, these sorry. I think that everything is up for debate, isn't it? And I mean, I like what is presented on this video that I showed a little bit of, in that it seems to make good sense to me in terms of a Big Bang. Yes. Right.
I think scientifically now it's supposed to be, you know, scientists say that anyone who believes in the Big Bang is crazy.
That's what we teach in schools, those Big Bang.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Oh, I'm a bit out of date, but I wouldn't take that until I'd studied a bit more.
Okay, it is 9 o'clock. Shall we take that break and call
Yes,
ourselves?
yes.
And so back here 10 past.